This is part 2 of exercise number 7. In this part of the exercise, we'll be going through and doing the actual analysis to determine what parcels are available for potential future community gardens. And in the first part of the exercise, we went through the process of pulling down a couple of additional layers, one for bus routes and one for exempt parcels. And in the exempt parcel layer, we added 3 different fields that we'll be using in this portion of the exercise to record the scores, so it'll know which parcels meet certain kinds of criteria. Let's go ahead and get started by opening up Map Window. This is how we left exercise 7 part 1. We have the layer for the garden buffers, the layer for the bus routes buffer, we have the Guilford County tracts symbolized by income, and of course we have the community garden locations shown here in the blue dots. So the first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and identify which exempt parcels fall inside the community buffer layer, and we'll go ahead and give those a score so we'll know which ones fell in that layer. So to do that, we're going to take and select Toolbox. We're going to pick Spatial Query, and we're going to select objects from or features from exempt parcels that intersect. Now these would be parcels that are either inside the buffer that we have around community gardens or across the edge of the boundary. And we're going to relative to objects from the garden buffer, and we'll pick OK. We're going to tell it's a new selection, and then we'll go ahead and hit close. So let's go ahead and zoom in here to one of these buffered areas. So as you can see, we've selected, in this particular case, we have the buffer around a particular community garden, and it has selected a parcel inside the buffer as well as a parcel that goes across the boundary. So the next thing we want to do now is go ahead and score these parcels so that we know that these are parcels which fall inside a buffer. And to do that, we'll go back to the Layers tab. We'll select Exempt Parcels. We'll pick Table. We're going to get all the records. And you notice that the records which have been selected through the spatial query are highlighted in blue. Let's go ahead and just recenter that for a second. Next thing we're going to do is use the field calculator to actually put in the values for us. So we're going to take all these parcels which have been highlighted. We're going to take the field near garden, which is where we're going to be scoring the parcels which fall near a garden, and we're going to give them a value of 1. And we'll calculate that in, and we'll say yes. Let's go ahead and scroll to the right. So now you notice that all the parcels which are highlighted have got a score of 1 if they're near a garden, or 0 if there haven't been intersected. There's been no intersection and they're outside of a garden. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. We'll save these changes. Let's go ahead and do the same thing, but now we're going to be using the bus routes as a buffer. Let's go ahead first of all and deselect the parcel so none of them are highlighted for us. We're going to go back to our toolbox, back to Spatial Query, and we're going to choose from exempt parcels that intersect bus route buffer, and we'll say OK. We'll tell it's a new selection, and then we'll close. So now let's go ahead and go back to the layers for a second. Let's turn off the garden buffer. So these are the buffers for my bus routes, and you'll notice once again parcels which fall inside the buffer have been selected, as well as parcels which are crossing the boundary. Let's go ahead now and score those. So we'll go back to our table. We'll get all the records. Parcels that have been selected have been highlighted in blue. We'll use our field calculator. This will be the bus routes column or field, and we're going to say those are equal to 1, and we'll calculate it. And we'll scroll across, and sure enough, parcels which have been highlighted through the spatial query now have a value of 1 in their bus routes. Let's go ahead and close that and save our results. Let's go ahead and unselect all of these. Our final query is actually going to be the trickiest, because in this case what we're going to be doing is we're going to select parcels which fall in low income census tracts. So the first thing we have to do is we have to select the census tracts which are low income, and then we're going to select the parcels which fall inside the selected census tracts. We've arbitrarily decided that the census tracts which are going to be considered low income are the bottom two scales here. So it'll be anything under $26,150. So let's go ahead first of all and do the attribute selection, which will select the tracks for us, and then we'll do the spatial selection. We're going to highlight Guilford tracks. We're going to go to the table. Since there are so few records, it automatically brought all of them back for us, so we don't have to get records. We're going to pick Select, Query, and the field which has got the income is called Median Income. We'll double click it. Median income is less than or equal to, and we'll go ahead and type in the value 26,150. We'll hit execute, make it a new selection, OK, and then we'll go ahead and close this, and we'll close the editor as well, or the table editor as well. So now you'll see, let's go ahead and pan over here a little bit. Now you see that it has selected certain tracks, and these are the tracks which fall into those lower two categories. Let's turn the bus routes off. We don't need that anymore. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and do our spatial query to find out which parcels fall inside those selected census tracts. Back to Toolbox, Spatial Query. We're going to choose things from exempt parcels that intersect Guilford tracks, but there's a little bit of a twist here, because we're going to only use the selected objects. In other words, the 17 tracks which have already been selected for us, those are the ones we're going to do the spatial query against, and we'll pick OK. New selection, OK again, and then close. So it's a little hard to see here because we have yellow on top of yellow. Basically what's going on is you'll see we have a parcel here which has been selected and it falls inside this previously selected census tract. Let's go back to layers, highlight exempt parcels, pick table, and we'll go ahead and we'll get all the records. And once again, you'll see now parcels which have been selected because they fall into the lower income census tracts. We'll pick the field calculator, and the value we'll be scoring here is low income. And we'll say low income is equal to 1. Calculate it. Scroll over. And sure enough, low income has now been set to 1 for the highlighted parcels. Let's go ahead and close this and save our changes. Our final step then will be creating a final feature class or a final shapefile which has got all of the candidate parcels. And to do that, we're going to be doing another query, and we're going to be doing it against the attribute table. First thing I'm going to do is deselect everything, and then we're going to pick table. We already have exempt parcels highlighted for us. We're going to get them all. We're going to pick select, query, and the query is going to be a little complicated because we're going to be working against 3 different fields. We're going to scroll down. We're going to want all the parcels where bus route equals 1, and at the same time, low income equals 1, and near a garden equals 0. Let's execute it, give it a new selection, and we'll close this. So we started off with over 3,500 exempt parcels, and now based on our spatial analysis, we've narrowed that down to 189. Let's go ahead and we'll export those to a new shapefile. We're going to put the new shapefile in with my other data, and we'll put it under parcels, and we'll call this candidate parcels because these are the candidates for future new community gardens. We'll hit save, and we'll add that new shapefile. We'll tell it to use a project's projection. That's okay. And let's close. All right, so we should be able to find now some parcels out here which have met all those criteria. There aren't any where we're looking right now, but let's go ahead and highlight these or change the symbology so they'll jump out at us when we take a look at it. We'll pick appearance, we'll pick more options, we'll make the fill color blue, and we'll pick the outline, and we'll make the outline blue as well. And we'll pick OK, and we'll pick OK again. Now let's turn off some of these other things we don't need right now. Let's turn off the exempt parcels. And let's zoom out to the entire extent, the entire county. And you'll notice that we've got some parcels starting to show up down here in High Point. So we have a bunch of parcels in High Point. Let's see why that is. They're outside the buffer. They are inside the bus buffer, and they're also inside the low-income census tracts. So we have several parcels in High Point. I've looked at this data before, and I've found that for Greensboro, there actually is only one parcel that met that criteria, and it's right there. So we created a map which has got all of our spatial analysis, and the only other thing we need to do beyond creation of the map is to take this list of 189 parcels and get it into Microsoft Excel. Because as you work with this data for your final report, you may want to have a list of these parcels, and the easiest way to do that is to import it into Excel. Let's go ahead and we'll minimize Map Window for a second, and we'll launch Excel. I'm using Microsoft Excel 2007. And so working with DBF files is a little awkward in 2007. Now you'll remember in the shapefile there are three important files. There's the .shp, which has got the geometry. There is the .shx, which has got an index. And there is the .dbf file. That's the file that actually has the attribute information, so that's the one we want to open up. Let's go ahead and using Excel, let's just resize this for a second. Using Excel, let's go ahead and navigate to the directory which has got our parcel information. And you'll notice it's not showing our candidate parcels. That's because we have to ask Excel to specifically look for a DBF file. And now it sees the DBF file for our candidate parcels. Let's go ahead and open it. Since it's already opened up in Map Window, it's giving me this read-only message. That's perfectly okay. And here we have all 189 potential parcels. Let's go ahead and save that as an Excel spreadsheet, and we'll call it Candidate Parcels. So this is pretty much where I'm ending the exercise. Now I have a map which has got all the information you need. We now have an Excel spreadsheet which has got a list of the parcels. And your assignment from this point out is to develop the management report, just 2 or 3 pages that you're going to be giving to the master gardeners so that it will explain to them how you came up with the 89 parcels and any additional information you think that they should have on the project. You can make this up with as many maps as you want. Again, it just needs to be 2 or 3 pages, however. Once you get the report done, you're going to save it as a PDF file, upload it to Google Drive, upload your map or maps, depending on how you want to present the information, upload that to Google Drive, and then that will conclude that exercise.